Yeah, good morning, dear aspirants of Unacademy. Um, I hope you're all safe as we keep asking every day. This is extremely important for all of us because we're going through not just a pandemic, but a life transforming, society transforming experience. You can take it that way, although it cannot be treated in a very positive way. But there are lots to learn from this pandemic. So be aware of that. So yesterday we had discussed the Wilson's contribution, Woodrow Wilson's contribution to public administration, and he was known as the father of public administration. And today we move to a post-Weberian development because Weber was the person who created the current bureaucracy. Okay, so we'll understand that. So we'll today look at new public administration, and for this, the books to be looked at are Mohit Bhattacharya. If you were to read about new public administration, and if you have to read about Waldo, who is the pioneer in new public administration, then you have to look at Prasad and Prasad. Okay, right. So when you approach theories in public administration or theories of public administration, then you please understand that there are two systems of theories: closed system theories and open system. Closed system theories are also known as universal design theories, and open system theory is known as situational design. That is according to the situation. So, as can be understood from the first one, closed system theory, it means that the theory does not take into account the ecology. That is, it does not take into account the social, political, economic, cultural, technological, historical subsystems, etc., subsystems of public administration. So you are not considering this when you are creating this theory of public administration. It means that all these subsystems don't interact with the theory, which means the theory is universal, irrespective of person, place, or time, can be proved right. And this was proved extremely wrong by the open system theory people like Fredericks, who said that all these subsystems interact with public administration and mutually affect each other. So, because we are talking about periods in time. We are talking about time when people had only these classical theorists, and then we move to behavioral theorists, then we move to post-behavioral, then we move to post-Weberian, right? So we need to understand the context in which these theories, or the historical context in which these theories were formulated by those, but it's, even those theories have been debunked. Those theories, but they created the path for public administration, right? So basically, all the theories, most of the theories are closed system theories, and they can be divided into classical theories, neoclassical theories, behavioral theories, and post-behavioral theories. So we want to place new public administration somewhere. Okay, so that's why I'm putting this preface. I'm not going straight about new public administration because you need to understand this. That there are the closed theories are classical theories, neoclassical theories, behavioral theories, post-behavioral theories, period. Right? So what are the classical theories? Scientific management theory by Frederick Taylor is one. You'll be learning it in another week's time. Then administrative management theory by Henry Fayol, a Frenchman. Bureaucratic theory by Max Weber. So you need to understand this, that this is the most important theory, because we all follow the bureaucracy that we have in India today is mostly 90%, 99% you can say, Weberian bureaucracy. And what we're going to learn today is a reaction to that. And classical theory by Gulick and Urwik. Okay, so you need to remember Weberian bureaucracy. So scientific management theory, administrative management theory, bureaucratic theory, classical theory. What are the neoclassical theories? Human relations theory by Elton. I'm going a step further and looking at the human aspect, because the others all create what's called the machine man. That is, you give more money, they do more work. No emotions, no thoughts, no prestige, no honor, nothing. Right? They didn't even consider them as human beings. That's why they are called machine. But they laid the foundations of public administration in a big way. Please understand that. Okay. So human relations theory by Alton Mayo, neoclassical theory by that's called dynamic administration by Mary Parker Foley, the only lady public administrator that we will be studying. Behavioral theories, again, dwelling deeper into human emotions. Behavioral theory of organization by Chester Bernard, very, very important theory. And a big change is the decision-making theory by Herbert Simon. And Simon was the first person to say that all the other theories are all proverbs by old men. Don't even look at them. My theory about decision-making is the theory, and that's universal, is what I said. Everybody says that, their theory is universal, it's a science of administration, classical, etc., etc., etc. And what are the post-behavioral theories? After these behavioral theories came the theories of motivation, about Maslow, theories of leadership, theories of decision-making, theories of communication, theories of morale. Now, where do you place new public administration? That we place in post-Weberian developments. So Weber came and talked here about the bureaucratic theory. Then all the theories that we are talking about are not post-Weberian. Of course, it's after Weber only, but it is not a reaction to Weber. It is a continuation of Weber, right? But the post-Weberian theories are all anger directed against the Weberian bureaucracy. What are the theories? New public administration, public choice theory, new public management, and there's something called new public service also. I'll possibly teach you because it's not there in the syllabus, but you need to understand it though. And good governance. Good governance will cover in paper 2. So these are the theories that we'll cover in the next classes. Today, if you're taking new public administration, tomorrow it will be public choice theory, and day after tomorrow it will be new public management, and I will take new public service also, right? So that you place yourself and understand. So when questions come, you could also say that in a reaction to new public management is new public service, right? So it enhances your profile, it enhances your vocabulary. Your public administration vocabulary will be increased. So we are placing new public administration in post-Weberian theory as a post-Weberian development. You don't even call it theory because these are not theories. These are all developments. Got it? Are you with me? How many of you are there? 2 of you are there with me right now. Anyways, I hope if you have a problem, I suppose there's chat available. If you want to ask me a question, we could ask. I'm open to that. So have a look at this man, a great intellectual, Dwight Waldo. He had the what's called guts. You need guts to actually question the flow of events. When there's a flow of events having somebody going against the flow. Generally 99.99% go with the flow. It's just 0.1%. Somebody like me, etc., would go against the flow and ask the questions. He was a man who asked those questions. Clifford Dwight Waldo, and you need to know about him, 1913 to 2000. So he lived quite long, right, on this earth, and he created so many things for us. Today, you are a post-LPG student. I'm a pre-LPG old man, right? So you need to understand that these people created the stuff for you so that the civil service becomes much, much better for all of us. Not only for you as a civil servant, but for the people also, how it affects them in a very, very direct way. So, Dwight Waldo is a person you cannot ever forget. In fact, all the administrators all the thinkers we need to keep in mind. But here's a man who took a complete break and went against the Weberian development. And today, India is doing so well because of Waldo. Because we adopted the Weberian bureaucracy, but we added the values that Waldo was talking about. Please understand, right? You have any questions? No questions here. He's considered one of the most defining figures in the discipline of public administration. So, if you look at the defining figures, one is you look at Kautilya, or you look at who wrote the Prince, then Aristotle, who wrote the Republic. Of course, Woodrow Wilson, you cannot, because he wrote that essay which brought into sharp focus the discipline of public administration as against political science. And Dwight Waldo was a political scientist by training. And he also subsequently he became a bureaucrat. So that's very interesting development. We'll read about it. he became aware of the limitations of the principles of administration. What are the principles of administration? One, it's a science of administration. Two, that you can offer incentives, money. That is, what are the rationality adopted? Rationality adopted. More money is more money, more work. So human beings can be told that you give more, I'll give you more money, you give me more work. They don't even look at the human emotions. And third thing is value neutrality. And political neutrality. So if you remember this, politics administration dichotomy. If you remember this, politics administration dichotomy, where in a very confusing manner, Woodrow Wilson said that politics is the domain of politicians. Administration is the domain of administrators, and these will never meet. But later he said that both will coordinate with each other. Right? And Weber took it a little further, and he said that you will not have any values. And he said that you not have any values. The politician can have values. He can have empathy. He can have sympathy. He can have all the other values that are required to frame a. But once that policy is set, the bureaucrat's job is just implementation. The IAS officer's job, purely implementation. Right? So that's what he said. Political neutrality and value neutrality. You have to be absolutely neutral. That is blinkered eye. Just keep going where the politician is asking you to go. That's where India took a different path. Because that is good for an economy like US or UK or Germany or Italy or France. All of them had undergone what was called industrial revolution. And their countries had become prosperous. So what will they be sustaining? They will be just sustaining their prosperity. What will India be sustaining? At the end of 1947, we were $44 trillion, $44 trillion less, right? $44 trillion less. So much money was taken out of our country by the UK, and India became from the most powerful nation, 30% global trade, 30% of global GDP. We became such a poor nation that our global trade was less than 0.5%. So India was impoverished, poor, no infrastructure, illiteracy, insanitation, ignorance, superstition, you name it, all the things. So if you want to sustain this, with this bureaucracy, you will be sustaining all this illiteracy, insanitation, ignorance, poverty, lack of infrastructure, all these things. So did we want that? So we said, no, we will take a cut with this. We will continue with the Weberian bureaucracy, but we'll have values. And that is, thank God, that's because of people like Dwight Waldo, who went against the current, who went against the then thinking. And he was treated almost like a pariah in public administration, in political science, in public administration. You know, because it can be very demeaning. So in your own field, if your friends don't take care of you and they kind of laugh at you, then you can imagine how it is. So when we say it's a pariah, it's really bad, because they will not be talked to, they'll be boycotted, all kinds of stuff would happen against Dwight Waldo and team. Sorry, taking so much time I wish, on the Unacademy software, one click the whole thing can be erased. Here you need to rub it like this. Right? Right? Right. Right. So one of the most defining figures in political science and public administration became aware of the limitations of the principle. I told you the limitations. And in his book, The Administrative State made him a pariah in the field of discipline of public administration. He was treated with a long this thing. He was not allowed to even attend many of the programs of political science. So he was a prolific writer. Please understand. He was an extremely prolific writer. His other publications include, so one was The Administrative State, the most important thing which we need to read also. The Study of Public Administration, 1955. The Novelist on Organization and Administration in 1963. Public Administration in a Time of Turbulence, 1971. What is 1971? US, Vietnam War and all those things. The country was going through a hell of a lot of problems. The Enterprise of Public Administration, 1980. Bureaucracy and Democracy, a Strained Relationship, 1999. And can you imagine? He died in 2000. So, till his death, he was an academic par excellence. And you need to keep that in mind. Just 1 year before his death, he published Bureaucracy and Democracy, a Strained Relationship. We'll talk about that, because that's very critical for our understanding of public administration and how it stands today. So, Administrative State made him a pariah. We had other books, Study of Public Administration, Novelist on Organization and Administration, Public Administration in a Time of Turbulence, The Enterprise of Public Administration, Bureaucracy and Democracy, a Strained Relationship. So he gives an overview of the discipline and he offers penetrating insights and criticisms. And he didn't come out with any theory. Okay, that's what is a major criticism against Waldo, that you didn't come out against, you just kept on telling things. He kept on giving comments on recent developments. And he speculated on the future of the enterprise of public administration. That book also he wrote, The Enterprise of Public Administration. He speculated what is going to happen to this public administration. And he also revealed the implicit assumptions. See, the problem with public administration is that when you form a theory, you have facts, and based on the facts, to move forward, you need assumptions. Right? So he revealed those implicit assumptions and the hidden premises. So he revealed those implicit ways of this theory making. This is what he looked at. He looked at all this theory, classical theories and behavioral theories and post-behavioral theories, neoclassical theories, all the theories, and what are the assumptions that they were making. And he proved that those assumptions themselves were wrong. So when the assumption is wrong, the theory is also wrong, right? How much of the facts stand out? If the assumption is wrong, the theory becomes wrong, right? So he proved he revealed the assumptions and the premises, hidden premises, not to the outside world, on the basis of which these theories were evolved, and the underlying the various approaches to public administration. So he raised questions rather than answered them. One of the biggest criticisms is he raised only questions. He did not have any answers. So what is what we are saying? He raised questions, very important questions of public administration, and he left it to the future thinkers to answer. That's one way of putting it, right? So, if you can look at what Wilson said, politics, administration, dichotomy. And later he also said, this dichotomy is complete, but he said they need to cooperate also to make the administration smarter. And there was supposed to be value neutral. And politically neutral. So value neutral. Whereas, you look at this politics administration dichotomy. Here, administration as politics approach. So this is an entire opposite of this political administration. So you have to understand. Sorry. You have to understand this from Wilson's point of view and from Waldo's point of view. That is, we are taking a complete break from politics administration dichotomy. In fact, he said that Waldo said that politics administration dichotomy is false. It is not possible. Administration as politics. In fact, Wilson later said it should cooperate and all. So he criticized both the classical and behavioral approaches. He said facts cannot be separated from values. This is the most important thing in new public administration. Why? Administration is perhaps more an art than a science. And you need to understand this. There's been a question asked how administration is an art, than science. And then you have to think about Waldo. Because why treating it as a science? Because only facts were taken into consideration, no values. And facts will be arranged linearly or in a logical fashion based on certain assumptions, right? And they will come out their theory, right? So this was supposed to be universal. That is irrespective of time, place, or person. The theory will be equally true. That's why it's called universal. So science of administration, universality, all these classical thinkers are reveled and keep on saying this. Right? Let's rub it off. Okay. So he said that public administration has a political administration. And we all know that. Even Wilson knew that. But Wilson only said that you don't. Wilson knew just just follow what Wilson only said that you don't just follow what. Even Wilson later on said he wants cooperation. Similarly, Wallace said there should be cooperation within political and administrative domains. His objective was to treat. So this is very significant. Just like Wilson, if you take Wilson, he wrote 3 drafts on this study of public administration. So each time he was improving in his thoughts, right? Each time he was improving his thoughts. So similarly, Waldo also wanted to treat public administration as a part of political science. Wilson wanted public administration to be a separate domain, separate discipline, right? So he wanted to prove the usefulness and relevance of political theory itself, being a political scientist. But, he went to Italy as a bureaucrat. That's the time when this came into his empathy started. He started empathizing with the bureaucrats. Politicians can say so many things, but the guys, like the bureaucrats who implement stuff, and he started understanding the difficulties faced by the bureaucrat. So he had empathy for administrators. So he started identifying himself more with public administration after his experience as a bureaucrat. So a complete shift from political theory to public administration, right? And he said, no one should be allowed to teach political science without an experience in public administration. Right. So this is again, shows the flexibility of the man, that he's willing to change. He's not dogmatic about his theory or his thoughts, right? So Waldo, you have to understand, very important person, very important thinker in our public administration. So what about Waldo's central themes? And you have seen that book, Democracy and Bureaucracy, a Strained Relationship. He says there's an intrinsic tension between democracy and bureaucracy. What is democracy? Democracy is for all. It will look at values. It will look at poor people. Values. There will be a bias towards etc. Where is bureaucracy? no values. There will be a bias against hidden agenda of self-aggrandizing hidden agenda of bureaucrats and self-vote seeking or bureaucrats and vote seeking or rent seeking politicians. Vote seeking, all right, rent seeking. So because of this, right, there will be definitely. So because of this, that's why he said there will be intrinsic tension between democracy and bureaucracy. And he also said politics administration dichotomy is false. So he said administration as politics approach. And he also said whatever efficiency bureaucracy is demanding from you, that you vet with the due process of law. Don't go against law. And he also said government cannot be run like a business. And you know why? Wilson was always thinking that government was unbusinesslike. So government had to be run less unbusinesslike. What is his definition? He says should straighten the path of governance and to make the work of government less unbusinesslike. Right? So if you look at Waldo, he is always going against Wilson's ideas. Okay, so that much you need to remember. Okay, 1 second. Sorry for this, but I need to rub it off. So Waldo's central theme, so intrinsic tension between democracy and bureaucracy, politics administration. Dichotomy is false. Efficiency is demanded, has to be negotiated, due process of law by public servants, and government cannot be run like a business. Right? And, very interesting, he denied the possibility of constructing a science of public administration. In fact, he felt that public administration can both be an art and a science. Right? He doubted the existence of principles. So he is debunking the whole classical theorists. He doubted the existence of principles of administration. He questioned the plausibility of a unified theory of administration. There can't be a unified theory. He refused to define public administration. Why? Because, when you define public administration, you are restricting its scope. This is very important. But he believed that the fate of civilization will rest on our ability to master the functions of administration. So this is very important, and you should know a little history here. The Romans, the Mughals, the British, all these empires failed at some point of time because of their poor administration. The Romans, they were always on conquest. So they had to keep an army well fed and ensure that they're taken care of, otherwise they will revolt. How much can you feed into an army? So at some point of time, there will be no money, and then the soldiers will revolt. Same thing with Mughals. They were also trying to take more and more place. British, they were taking all the money out, $44 trillion. At some point, towards 1900s, 1920s, they had to pump in money in India. They were taking money out, but they had to pump in money because India was a huge country. And they were taking over the administration of a huge country. So they had to pump in money. So without money, there's no organization. You know that. I mean, everything can be there. The physical organization can be there. The people can be there. But without money, nothing will move. So all these civilizations failed because money was used for other purposes. Right? And obviously, public administration will suffer. And hence, civilization will fail. So possibly, we don't know, the Harappan civilization would have had, at some point in time, great prosperity. Some leader would have come and some leader would have destroyed that prosperity and civilization would have destroyed their possibilities. That's the way it happens. So Waldo, despite all the fact that you don't treat it as a science of civilization, science of administration, or principles, or universality, unified, no refusal to define. If you look at the previous day, government cannot be run like a business. Despite the fact that he said all this, he truly believed that administration is critical for the survival of civilization. Just wrapping it up. Right. He also felt that more than political science, the domains of sociology, business administration, organization theory are more germane to the agenda of public administration. Sociology, business administration, organization theory. So more than political science. Because if you see the evolution of public administration that we'll study last after the theories are over, the fight is always between political science and public administration. Because political science people felt that these are small guys who come out of us. And public administration is always trying to prove that they have a theory, unified theory, science of administration, unified theory, can run like business, etc. So at some point, many of the thinkers came back to political science. But here, Waldo, despite being a political scientist, and despite having a huge bias towards political science, he had an empathy after becoming a bureaucrat to public administration, and says more than political science, business administration, sociology, and organization theory are germane to the agenda of public administration. So look at the man; he's taken a complete 360-degree turn, right? So that shows that he's flexible in his thoughts. And Waldo felt that public administration, even though you have to see this. Let's say 5,000 years back. This is 5,000 minus 5,000. Okay, this is 2021. So there was public administration even during the 2.4 billion years when man came into being, and 70,000 years of back when we had the cognitive revolution, or 20,000 years back when we had the agricultural revolution, or 500 years back when we had the industrial revolution. So public administration was there right from man's arrival on earth. But that's not part of the written history. So maybe around 5,000 years also they had. So public administration was there all throughout. But public administration as a discipline has been there only since 1887. So roughly 130 years. So this is a difference. Public administration as a science, as a discipline, and public administration as an activity or an institution. So public administration as an activity or an institution, etc., has been there for time immemorial. Both coexisted and nurtured each other. This is a very important question that can be asked. What are the views of Waldo on public administration and civilization? You say that public administration and civilization coexisted, nurtured each other. Both were internal parts of human progress. Civilization promoted administration. Administration made civilizational achievements possible. So these are the things that you need to write. So you need to expand on this and write on history. That's why it attaches a lot of importance to historical approach. Right? Like Wilson also had this philosophical, but philosophically rejected historical, legal approaches. Waldo had lots of importance to history because he says only from history can you learn. Only from the pitfalls of administration and can you move forward. And he touched a lot of it. He felt that much of the public administration literature was anti-historic because they didn't take history into consideration. Ignoring the past denies an important source of insights, hypothesis, and scientific conclusion. And the techniques of administration are at the center of political government evolution. He maintains that government and administration are substantially equivalent. Administration frames civilization. If you can use these sentences while you answer those questions, it'll be great. Administration frames civilization by giving it a foundation and providing a base for growth. So, administration is the foundation for civilization. So, that's the conclusion you have to draw. If you are asked to write an essay worth 20 marks on Waldo's thoughts on civilization and administration, these are definite questions that are likely to be asked. Please don't ignore this. And these notes are good enough. You don't need to dwell into any public administration textbook. These notes are good enough, right? And if you're taking notes while I'm teaching, I think that should be excellent. And if you can just keep reading your textbooks, it'll be pretty good for you. So his thoughts on administration and governance. We have heard his thoughts on administration and civilization. He talked about this. Now he's talking about administration and governance. He says, these are not merely an artificially created intruder in a state of nature that would otherwise be serene and prosperous. Now you have to understand this in context. Please understand this. What is this state of nature? So you should state of nature, serene and prosperous. Serene and prosperous. So the thinkers, political science thinkers like Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Rousseau, I don't know, SS, Rousseau, Kant. These are the people who talked about how Earth was before administration or without administration. Earth would be without would be without administration, without politics, without political administration. And these are 1600s when these thinkers, okay. Now what do they say? They said that when there is nothing called a government or politics, there is a state of nature which is serene and prosperous. Serene and prosperous, but you are qualified because now every human being is on his own, powerful. He can do whatever he wants. To himself, he can do whatever he wants to others. So there will be what? They argued that if there is a state of nature, it will never be serene and prosperous for more time. Because they'll start fighting with each other. They'll be killing. There'll be rape. There'll be plunder. If man is left without a political base. That is state of nature we don't want. That's why people realized that we can be killers. We can plunder. We are capable of that. We have the potential to do that. But so, let's give up all our rights. So here, the rights are absolute. You can do anything you want. You can fight, you can kill, you can plunder, you can do whatever you want. What does that mean? Which means fundamental rights to the extreme. What does our fundamental rights say? Fundamental rights, but with limitations, right? Fundamental rights with limitations. Right? If you don't have limitations, everybody will be a power unto himself. And the most powerful will succeed. It will be the survival of the fittest. So what these Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau, Kant and all say? They all came out with different versions of one thing, which is called the social contract. Sorry, it's going slow. Social contract theory, which says that, okay, we are ready to give up some of our rights so that a few people can govern us. We are willing to do that to ensure that there is no fight, no killing, no rape, no plunder, no murder, etc. That's called the social contract. It's an unwritten contract, right? So the state of nature will have an overlay of politics on it, and then it will not be serene and prosperous. It will be much better than a murderous situation, right? So that's what so that's why what we have to understand here, that this administration is not an intruder into this serene state of nature, but rather it's a necessity. It has a creative role. Government has a creative role, right? Government has a creative role. While government is always marginally oppressive, sometimes massively so, still there are so many achievements. If you take the progress of civilization, thanks to government, we are all there. Otherwise, when we started as an amoeba, we started as a cell, and today we are 7 billion people on earth. It is only because of the regulations by government. So despite the increase in scale and complexity of the activities, the government apparatus, administrative apparatus, perform their functions with at least moderate success. So this is his thought, Waldo's thoughts on administration and governance. What is his thoughts on classical theories? He does not go so much as Simon. Simon said these are all proverbs by old men. All the classical theories. But he didn't do that. He said these are all orthodox and I wish to be heterodox. The field of, it's a spelling mistake. The field of public administration is characterized by a diversity of perspectives. You can't have an orthodox approach. And he says while classical approach has not been rejected or repudiated, it has been absorbed, amended, extended, joined by new perspectives. So the classical thinkers were very rigid. There is no universal science, this, that. But he says, okay, we are not rejecting it completely like Simon did, but it can be amended, it can be absorbed, it can be extended, it can be joined by new perspectives. Thus, some of the ideological and philosophical underpinnings of the classical approach has been rejected. Science, rejected. Universal, rejected. Unified, rejected. Right? Many of the other underpinnings have simply gone underground. Right? Are you with me? There's somebody waiting. The influence of the business mentality is diminished the idea. So he says the business mentality has also diminished the idea of a fundamental law which is a higher moral order than anything. And there's an increasing skepticism about notion of progress. So what is the higher moral order? Which is the equity. The higher moral order is of equity. And because we need to go business-like, it's about economy. Efficiency first. Efficiency, economy, and effectiveness. These three E's go against a fundamental law, and a higher moral order, which is equity. And higher moral order. There's increasing skepticism about the notion. What do you mean by progress? Is what they're asking. Is this the progress that we want? Pragmatism continues to be the unarticulated working philosophy of public administration. Pragmatism, being practical. This manifests in the effort to construct a new science of administration in a manner consistent with the tenets of behavioralism. Is against both. So he's against pragmatism and is against behavioralism. Right? So we'll go a bit faster on this because we are still studying Waldo. Okay. So there are 5 classical approaches of the classical approach. Acceptance of politics administration, dichotomy which rejects generic management orientation, that's business orientation, rejected. Search of principles of administration, rejected. An emphasis on centralization and executive bureaucracy, rejected. A commitment to democracy, yes, he accepts that. These 4 other things have been rejected by him. So what are the NPA? What is how did new public? So this is the background in which new public administration came into being as early as or as late as 1988. Because from 1900 onwards, it is a Weberian bureaucracy. Till 1929, the Weberian bureaucracy created that goods and services will be done by the markets. Government will do only regulation. So what happened? Thanks to the what's called Taylor's success in the efficiency movement. Taylor's efficiency movement. The production had gone up massively. There was a world war also, and because of the world war, other countries were suffering, whereas America was not suffering. It was producing more and more. It was exporting. They made a lot of prosperity. But after the war came down, there was no need for the exports, and that's how in 1929 this Taylor's approach led to what's called the Great Depression. And then the whole goods and services was taken over by what's called the public sector enterprises. And when public sector enterprises came into being, they became what I call a monopoly, right? Of goods and services. Only they were supplying. So when they are a monopoly, they become corrupt. When they are corrupt, they also become nepotism is there. That is only relatives take care of them. All these are actually features of not the bureaucracy. Actually, the features what's called the spoil system of the past. Right. So this was a bureaucracy which had adopted the spoil system now. So by 1968, because the Vietnam War. And the universities were asking America had Vietnam in the first place. They were losing the war. They were losing men, material, everything. And they were being humiliated around the world. Right? So they were asking this question, why? So 1968, that's how we came with the new public administration. Okay. You have to understand this piece of history. Sorry, because otherwise you'll not be able to see it clearly. I had to rub this down. Some few seconds are lost. We have 45 minutes when I can finish the new public administration. And if you have any questions, you could ask me. I wish you are part of my regular plus class, because these YouTube classes and all will only give you a flavor of what we teach in Unacademy. Right? We want you to become a student in our plus class. Come join us and benefit from it. So, origins and development in the USA, new public administration conditions, industrial revolution. From feudalism, it became capitalist country. From capitalism emerged what's called bureaucracy and market. Market have complete freedom. Price of commodities are determined by the markets. Capitalism is based on perfect competition in markets. You know all this, right? Large number of buyers and sellers. So, one buyer and seller cannot make a difference, but large number of buyers and sellers. So, price comes to an average based on demand supply. No single buyer or seller can determine the price of a commodity. So, what's happening? Free entry and exit. All these are features of a free market. So, if you have normal profits, markets will always be in equilibrium, right? Role of the state is restricted to regulatory functions. Developmental and welfare functions are done by the private sector. The supply of goods and services are done by the private sector. It's called the rightist philosophy. So, left, right, and middle is centrist. Left is the Soviet Union rightist philosophy, or neoliberal policy was being followed by the West, especially the US. Rightist philosophy in economics. And because of free entry and exit, new players will enter into the market. And profits will increase because of innovation. It reduces the cost of production, increase profits. So what happens is people will consume more and then only invest. What happens if you have $100? Most of it will say, let's say 80% will go into consumables, because they have to exist. Balance 20% only you will have savings. So USA generally does not save. Almost zero savings. China is around 40%. India is around 35% savings. Even today, because the Americans always, because there's no point. Their interest rate of interest is almost nearing zero. Whereas we have around 5 to 8%, right, interest. So there's some investment. So the Americans always invest in the stock market. So while this was on in the 1900s, they started investing whatever little they had on the stock market after spending on consumables, right? Investments increased, They started investing stocks. Then, the production was largely supported by the imports from the war-torn countries. So Taylor's efficiency movement had created so much a surplus that after the war, those countries started producing their own goods and services. So this demand dropped, and that a skyrocketing stock market fell down like 9 pins. Please understand this. So what happened in the 1930s and 1940s? Rapid expansion of the scope of public sector units. I told this 1950s. Further expansion of the scope of the monopoly of public sector units, providing all services to people. US government had given the PSUs the responsibility of managing them to the Weberian bureaucracy. Right? Obviously, it's a Weberian bureaucracy. What happens in a Weberian bureaucracy? No competition. The bureaucracy was also invested with developmental functions. The performance suffered. Bureaucracy also performed poorly. Bureaucracy was more interested in enforcing rules and regulations and not providing quality goods and services. Operation successful, patient died. That's called gold displacement. We know all this. 1960s was a turbulent decade for USA because of the failure of PSUs, because of social unrest, because of Vietnam War. So these were the conditions which was ripe enough for a new public administration to come in. And then there was this Honey report on higher education for public services, which highlighted the institutional shortcomings in the area of public administration between the scholars and practicing administrators. Then the Philadelphia Conference on Theory and Practice of Public Administration, 1967, emphasized the role of public administration in terms of addressing social problems and promoting social equity with a progressive transformation of state from a police state to a welfare state. So Philadelphia Conference is bent on making it a welfare state. And the Minnow-Brook Conference, this is the most important thing. The Minnow-Brook, it's a hall in John Hopkins, I think, University. So Minnow-Brook happened in 1968. Minnow-Brook 1. Minnow-Brook 2 happened in 1988. So you can see 20 years. Minnow-Brook 3 happened in 2008. 2000. So 20 years later, 2020. 20 years later, 2020, you'll all be IAS, and you definitely, because you're a public administration student, you'll definitely want to have a look at the Minnow-Brook Conference. What is being discussed there? I'm also looking forward to that as a student of public administration, as a teacher in public administrations. I'm also intrigued because I've been concerned heavily with public administration because I'm a person who transforms public administration using technology, etc. Right? So I'm sure, maybe if it's possible, I will attend the Minnow-Brook's conference if they invite me. And possibly my books will come out before that. Right? So the Minnow-Brook Conference, 1968, held under the chairmanship of Dwight Waldo, critically reviewed the study and practice of public administration in a changing environment. The conference advocated a normative approach. What is normative? Normative. Meaning of normative is I'm writing. Normative is the opposite. Normative is the opposite of empirical. Empirical means just report what you see. Empirical means just report what you see. What you observe. What you empirical observe. Is report what you observe. Normative is you say I'm observing this. I don't like it. You say I'm observing how it is, how it can be. I'm always normative. I always think Chennai looks like this. Why can't Chennai be like Switzerland? That kind of thing. That's a normative behavior. You look at norms. How it is, how it can be. Right? So now they adopted a normative as opposed to an empirical approach. And instead of value-free approach, they went for a normative approach. So they added values here. And they said that, and we'll read that as we come into. Right? So to address the economic, social, and psychological evils of society. So these are all young scholars. The only old man is Waldo. So Waldo is the leader. They met at Minnow-Brook to discuss the future of the discipline of public administration. They were worried because public administration was in the doldrums. And if you read the evolution and we'll read about the evolution a little later. Evolution of public administration in the 1940s to 60s is called the lack of identity. Right? They had come out of political science. Public administration had come out of political science, but they had no moorings because the initial politics administration dichotomy, Weberian bureaucracy, all established. But then this is questioned by the young scholars. So the credibility of public administration came down. Some of the people went back to political science. Very humiliating experience. But some of them still wanted public administration to remain. Still wanted public administration. They kind of fought on. It would have been terribly humiliating for the scholars because they were always laughed at. Right? Right. Young scholars had identified some of the weaknesses of public administration. So, as I said, traditional public administration is dominated by Weberian norms, had resulted in the failure of public sector units and development administration, failure of both development administration and public sector units in the US. It's resulted in the country facing severe economic crisis. Severe economic crisis, unemployment, poverty, inflation, high fiscal deficits, and overall backwardness. They felt that traditional public administration should be replaced with new public administration for the discipline to be relevant under changing circumstances. This is very important. These are the sentences you should be using under changing circumstances. Under changing circumstances. Right? Okay. What are the goals of NPA? So that's what we have to remember as a mnemonic. R V easy. R stands for relevance, V stands for values, E stands for equity, and C stands for change. And all this means social relevance, social values, social equity, and social change. Right? This is what they wanted. These are the goals of: are we relevant? Do we have values? Are we equitable as a society? Are we bringing change? So let's look at each topic in a more detailed way. Right? So what is the relevance? Public administration has traditionally been interested in efficiency, economy, effectiveness. Efficiency, economy, and effectiveness. It has nothing to say about contemporary problems. It just say, okay, be efficient, economic, and effective. But what about the current problems and issues? And it was management-oriented, business-oriented public administration curriculum. And this was found irrelevant. Management-oriented. We said, no, there is generic management orientation. So this curriculum was irrelevant. Demand was to deal explicitly with the political and administrative implications of administrative actions. What is the objective of public administration knowledge? Is it for the perpetuation of political power? Those are the questions they are asking. Right? So the demand was to deal explicitly with the political and administrative implications of administrative actions. And if those administrative actions was not subserving the interests of society, what's the use of this political administration or public administration knowledge? Is it just for the perpetuation of political power? That is the question they asked. What is the relevance? Any academic discipline can retain its relevance only when it can provide solutions to its practitioners. Sorry, the spelling is wrong again. 1 second. So what they were saying is that the curriculum is outdated. Curriculum is outdated. And it was not providing any solutions. Not providing any solutions to practitioners. It's practitioners. I'm sorry for that. Extremely sorry for that. Generally, I'm very good at. I type myself, so nobody does it for me. So I'm wholly responsible for these mistakes. Okay. And similarly, public administration should provide solutions to problems faced by the practitioners. And bureaucracy can retain its relevance only when it comes out with solutions to the problems faced by the people. And to find solutions, they must interact with society. The closed system approach is a problem. So the problem with the bureaucracy is that they are interested only in rules, rules, operations, successful patient regulations, goal, operational assessment, successful patient goal. And because of this goal displacement, no solutions were being found. The current problems being faced by society. Our bureaucrats were immune being faced by the problems. They were not interacting with society. So it's a closed system approach also from the point of view of a discipline. So what are the questions they raised at Minnowbrook? What standards of decision do we use to select which question ought to be studied and how to study them? Who defines these questions and priorities? To what extent are we aware of the social and moral implications of knowledge in public administration? What are the uses of public administration as a social and political science? Does public administration only devote itself to the dominant sections of society? Very, important questions, very thought-provoking questions, very angry questions. Are we only trying to retain power to the dominant sections of people? This is a slap on the face of the bureaucracy, right? But they ask those questions. What standards of decision do we use to select which question ought to be studied? And how do we study them? Who defines these questions and priorities? To what extent are we aware of the social and moral implications of knowledge in public administration? What are the use of public administration, social and political science? And does public administration presently only devote itself to the dominant sections of society? Very, very critical questions asked at a very, changing times in the history of public administration. So relevance. We discussed relevance. Now we come to values. The new public administration explicitly said we will be normative in administrative analysis. It openly rejected value-neutral position taken by behavioral science and management-oriented public administration. Value neutrality in public administration is an impossibility. The discipline should espouse the cause to the disadvantaged sections of society. So we should have values. We should be normative. That's the take on values. Right? So this we explained many times. I don't think it requires further explanation. Right? Okay. And this is very important. The new public administration should be, and this is taken from a quote. I have split into 5 pieces so that you can remember it clearly. The new public administration should be less generic and more public. Generic means more towards the private sector, business-like approach. Less generic and more public. Less descriptive and more prescriptive. You know what they're doing? They are being empirical. When they are empirical, they are descriptive. When they are normative, they are descriptive. This is empirical approach. This is normative approach. This is a normative approach. So less descriptive and more prescriptive, less generic, less managerial, less private sector oriented, less business oriented and more public oriented, less empirical and more normative, less descriptive, prescriptive and more prescriptive, less institution oriented. So everybody is trying to keep the institution intact, and more client oriented. This is called client orientation. Less value neutral and more normative, right? But no less scientific. Whatever you do, still be scientific. Be scientific is what I say, right? So those are about values. This is something which you should remember by heart. Less generic and more normative, more public. Less descriptive and more prescriptive. Less institution oriented and more client oriented. Less neutral and more normative, but no less scientific. What about equity? The new public administrators were openly partisan to the poor, openly biased to the poor. So distributive functions. Equity is about distributive functions, right? How is the distribution happening? Are the poor getting proportionately equal from society? That's a distributive function. How the distributive functions and impact government institutions should be basic concerns of governmental institutions. They just need not spend without knowing whom it is going to impact, right? The purpose of public administration should be the reduction of economic, social, and psychic sufferings. The purpose of public administration should be the reduction of economic, social, and psychic sufferings, enhancement of life opportunities for those inside and outside the organization. And it says, Fredrickson, one of the pioneers of the new public administration thought process, he says, a public administration which fails to work for changes, which fails to redress deprivation of minorities, will likely be eventually used to repress those very minorities. Very, very significant statement from Fredrickson. A public administration which fails to work for changes, which fails to redress deprivation of minorities, will likely be eventually used to repress those very minorities. What about change? Obviously, relevance, values, and equity extra will bring change. To serve the cause of social equity itself is to actively work for societal change. The attack is on the status quo and against powerful interests entrenched in permanent institutions. When you say permanent institution, the most important permanent institution is the bureaucracy. So they have vested interests, powerful vested interests entrenched in them. That's why they call it self-aggrandizing bureaucrats. The new public administrators were unwilling to allow enslavement to permanent institutions. Whatever they say, we'll not accept. We'll take it with a heavy pinch of salt and we'll fight against what you're saying if it's not right by us. These institutions will steadily grow into self-perpetuating. So the fear was they will self-perpetuate and they grow into self-perpetuating power centers of dominant interests, not of the interests of the poor sections of society. So it's almost a egalitarian, communist, socialist approach. And the Minnebrook participants explored ways of institutionalizing change and remedying bureaucratic tendencies of big organizations. Right? So Waldo concluded that neither the study, after Minnebrook, he concluded that neither the study nor the practice of public administration was able. So both the study, that's a discipline. The discipline of public administration and the institution of public administration, that is an activity. activity. Both were unable to address the problems of times. Right? And a general mistrust had become associated with public administration. Right? So the need of the hour, and we are talking about 1968. I was born in that year. Was to revamp the ethical obligations of the service sector. Ethical obligations of the service sector. That was necessary in rebuilding the public's trust. So trust was lost. Rebuild the public's trust on government and bureaucracy, which was plagued by corruption, nepotism, and public administration should act as an instrument of initiating and sustaining that social change. Right? This gave way to a new dimension and approach of public administration, which is called new public administration. And you can imagine new public administration also pave way for public choice theory, new public management, new public service, and what we see as good governance today. So this was the break that we all needed in 1968, thanks to the floundering public sector units, public sector enterprises, mired in corruption, nepotism, inefficiency, ineffectiveness, lack of productivity, monopoly. Thank God it happened. But I am not a complete believer in the market either, because markets can be manipulated. You see, even the rich people doing what is called insider trading. You saw in 1992, Harshad Mehta, one single individual, was able to create so much problems. Same with the subprime crisis in the US in 2008 and the rest of the world. So, new public administration states that public administration does not function in a vacuum and that the administration has to be responsive towards the needs of society at large, which therein caters to the problems and malaise of society. We read all this. This is very important. Therefore, it was anti-positivist, anti-technical, anti-hierarchical reaction. So, anti-positivism means what? Positivism means they just see empirical. They just report what's there. What is technical? That is mechanistic. Man is a human machine. And bureaucratic hierarchy. Hierarchy. This is also creating problems. So, they were anti-positivist. These are anti-goals. You can call this anti-goals. What are the goals? Goals were to be relevant, to have values, to bring in equity, and bring in social change. If these are the goals, these are the anti-goals. Right? Anti-positivist, you have to remember this by heart. Please understand this. If you are a student of public administration, you are taking public administration as an optional, then there's no choice. You have to remember many of these. That's why in public administration, we say the public administration vocabulary. You can't write what you have to write. You have to write what the public administration theory thinkers tell, and there's a language for that. So all these are those languages: normative, what is called empirical, positivist, technical, hierarchical, anti-hierarchical. These are the and by reading many times only you will be able to get that vocabulary into your head, and will come very naturally when you write the answers. So when you write your answer with all this, you obviously is going to fetch more marks because they'll know that you have studied that and understood the subject. So the focus was on government, how they can provide essential services to citizens. And what are the anti-goals? Anti-technical, that is against the technical aspects of barbarian bureaucracy. Positivism is based on empiricism and rationality. That's based on facts without attaching values. That's called positivist, based on facts. Facts without values. Facts sans values. That's being positivist, right? So we don't want positivism. And anti-hierarchical. Bureaucracy behaves like machines. Hierarchy stands in the way of finding solutions. Somebody will put a spanner in the whole spoke and will stop a progressive activity. What are the suggestions by NPA? To achieve the above solutions. And they have, see, we are talking about 1968 and they are so forward in the thinking. What are they saying? Decentralize. Don't have the central authority. Give more power by decentralizing, debureaucratizing, delegating, democratization. Right? All this. So you have to make it more democratic. You delegate authority. Debureaucratize means reduce the red tape. Right? Decentralize. Don't have one power center. You have multiple power centers here. Right? So that's what he's saying. And democratize. Let people have their choice. Why should you have one bureaucracy who will provide all the goods and services when you're not doing it with efficiency? When you're creating problems for them, their expectations are belied. Why should you have that kind of bureaucracy? That's why they're saying democratizing. So when you come to public choice approach, one of the approaches is democratic administration. The other thing is when you administer, you also give choices to people. Right? So this gave root to the public choice approach, which is what we are seeing. It's one of the biggest impacts on society. Outsourcing is happening, contracting out is happening. All those things that you'll find a large number of marketization mechanisms happening, privatizations happening, right? Extreme marketization is privatization. First of all is contracting out, outsourcing, etc. And then we also bring in what is called managerial competence through the corporate management. What are the criticisms against new public administration? New public administration is considered anti-theoretic. Obviously, who will say? It will be the classical thinkers. Anti-theoretic, anti-positivist, and anti-management. Because they didn't like the generic approach. They wanted a more public approach. Anti-positivist because there was more empirical without values. So, facts without values. They wanted to move with facts and values. And anti-theoretical. Old wine in new bottle? Who said that? NPA thinkers have raised more questions than provide answers. So this one general criticism that you can raise. If you raise a question, you're told that you're not a thinker. You're only asking a question. So what are the contributions of NPA thinkers? By raising important questions regarding the future of the discipline of public administration, NPA thinkers have provided opportunities for future thinkers to come out with solutions. And what are the solutions? Development, like new public administration, public choice theory, development administration, good governance, new public service, etc. had their origins in new public administration. So we'll be learning all this. Right? Development administration also. All of them provide solutions to questions raised by NPA thinkers. So now NPA can be justified. They just ask questions during the times. But current thinkers are giving solutions to those very questions that they asked. Okay. What are the conclusions? New public administration did give a new dimension to public administration. It came at a time when the discipline was struggling for survival and losing its identity. So we describe this 1940s to 1960s was the time of lack of identity. A lot of the public administration people were coming back to political science because public administration was in doldrums. The problem with public administration, every thinker is trying to debunk the theory of other thinkers. Theories of other thinkers. Right? Everybody is trying to gain prominence at the expense of others. There was nobody trying to build up on. Whereas if you see this post-Weberian development of new public administration, actually, if you look at public choice approach, they consciously give credit to new public administration for giving them this approach. And new public management also takes its roots from new public administration. Right? So when Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher were looking for solutions to the problems that the public sector enterprises were creating, they had no doubt that they should go to the market. They had no doubt that they should go to the market. Right? They had absolutely no doubts that they should go to the markets. Whereas if you look at the classical theories, what is Simon trying to say? Simon tries to say that these are all old men's ideas. These are all old wine, not even a new bottle. And these are all impractical. They are proverbs. They cannot be implemented. They are proverbs by old men. That's what Simon taught. And Simon came out with this different approach. It's called decision-making theory. Making theory. Right? Decision-making theory is completely against all the classical approaches. Right? Or you look at sorry, let me rub it off. Right. So all these theories were at each other's neck, and when Waldo came out with this new public administration, and he wrote the administrative state, he was treated as a pariah by the classical thinkers. So that's why he came out strongly at the Minnowbrook 1 conference along with the supporters and said that value-free public administration is an impossibility. Right? That's why, it revived the discipline of public administration. It was then that new public administration focused on societal issues. So till then, they were trying to subserve the rules and regulations. We're hoping that, just like India had the licensed Raj, when Mr. Narayanamurthy, and I talked about this so many times, had to go to New Delhi 50 times to get hold of that one computer. Because everybody was asking their, and these people will not pay even one rupee. They were asked to come 50 times. He has recorded it in his book. Today, all of us have so many options. You can travel in the bus you want. You can go to the school you want. You can take the auto you want. You can take the phone that you want. You can take the pen that you want. You can go to any institution that you want. Because now it's not completely bureaucratic. We have choices. Imagine 1980s. When this television came, Asian Games, we had only Doordarshan. right? Today also Doordarshan exists because it's a state mm, um, state propaganda machine. But today we have 88 plus 800 channels we are exposed to. So imagine this is what is called public choice, right? I can decide what I watch. You cannot trust anything on me. So governments like North Korea, etc., they don't give a choice to their people. They are in a fool's paradise. They are told that this is the best country in the world. Similarly, there are dictators who does not allow outside influences to happen. So societal problems are also taken care of. Society also had the opportunity to solve their own problems through different methods, not only the bureaucracy. See, today the bane of India is our bureaucracy, our IAS, IPS, refusing to change. I called most of them deadwood. Called most of them deadwood. No innovations.